Most people live in a cage and decorate it with ideas they never questioned. That's the strange tragedy of human society. It doesn't need bars to imprison people. It only needs traditions, beliefs, and collective fear. And those who dare to step outside the mental cage are never welcomed. They're mocked, misquoted, punished, or turned into distant saints, so no one follows their example. This is exactly why thinkers like Socrates, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Osho, and Carl Jung were not merely controversial. They were seen as dangerous, not because they hurt others, but because they made people think. And that's the greatest crime in a society that worships conformity. Socrates said, "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." That simple act of pushing someone to think becomes threatening to a society based on imitation. In Plato's dialogues, Socrates never claims to know the truth. Instead, he questions everything with humility and intensity. He unmasked the ignorance of the so-called wise, exposed the contradictions in societal norms, and challenged the blind obedience of the masses. And what did Athens do with this man of truth? They killed him. He was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth, which really meant awakening the youth. Socrates didn't give answers. He gave inner restlessness. He tore apart second-hand knowledge and exposed how most people only live as echoes of others. Thousands of years later, Krishnamurti would carry that same torch of inner rebellion. He too rejected all outer authority, including religious institutions, political ideologies, and psychological theories. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, he said. He dissolved the organization built around him, the Order of the Star, which had followers and rituals. He stood on stage and declared, "Truth is a pathless land. No methods, no systems, no gurus, just pure, direct observation of the self without distortion." And this made him an outsider. Those who build institutions don't like people who tear down illusions. Krishnamurti was not against religion. He was against imitation disguised as spirituality. His radical message was simple: don't follow anyone, including him. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, also found himself at odds with the collective mindset. In a time when Freud reduced the mind to sexual instincts and repression, Jung spoke of deeper layers, of archetypes, the collective unconscious, the shadow. But what truly unsettled the psychological community was Jung's emphasis on the individual soul, on spirituality, on inner transformation through self-confrontation. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. That one sentence threatens the entire social structure, because society doesn't want individuals. It wants identities. It wants roles to be played, not truth to be lived. Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that includes attacking those who mirror their inner discomfort. Osho, perhaps the most misunderstood among them, dared to combine the mystic with the modern. He laughed at organized religion, exposed the hypocrisy of nationalism, questioned celibacy, condemned political power games, and praised meditation, love, and awareness. "My message is very simple," Osho said. "Live your life as authentically and totally as possible, and don't imitate anyone." But authenticity is a threat to the mass mind. When a man is free within, he cannot be controlled. Not by governments, not by priests, not by society. That is why Osho was banned, attacked, poisoned, arrested. They called him dangerous because he encouraged people to think for themselves. But Osho never asked people to follow him. He often said, "Be a light unto yourself. Borrowed light is worse than darkness." What unites these four thinkers is not just their wisdom, but their dangerous honesty. Each of them said, in different ways, that society is fundamentally afraid of self-aware individuals. A society based on fear cannot tolerate freedom. A mind trained to obey cannot understand inquiry. In classrooms, we are taught answers, not questions. In families, obedience is rewarded more than curiosity. In religion, doubt is considered a sin. In politics, questioning authority is treason. So, when someone walks into the room and asks, "Why do you believe this? Who told you this is true? Have you seen it for yourself?" They don't receive a thoughtful response. They receive suspicion, rejection, or violence. The questioner becomes a mirror, and people are terrified of their own reflection. Socrates made people see their ignorance. Krishnamurti made them see their conditioning. Jung made them confront their shadow. Osho made them laugh at their seriousness. And each of them suffered the consequences, not because they were wrong, but because they were right in a world built on lies. There's a reason Krishnamurti said, "The ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence." But most people don't observe, they react. The moment you challenge their beliefs, you're not engaging in dialogue, you're threatening their identity. Think about daily life. Someone says they believe in a religion, a nation, an idea. But if you gently ask them, "Why do you believe this? Did you discover it yourself?" they'll often become defensive. Not because you attack them, but because you expose their borrowed reality. This is why true questioners are always lonely. Not because they hate people, but because most people live inside illusions and don't want the illusions disturbed. As Krishnamurti once said, "To be sane in an insane world is itself a kind of madness." Even Carl Jung observed that society prefers predictability over authenticity. The most terrifying thing, he said, is to accept oneself completely. That is rebellion. To look into your own unconscious, to accept your fears, your darkness, your contradictions, is to break free from societal images. But when a person becomes too real, too honest, too aware, the world starts to avoid them. Jung even warned that the crowd is the root of psychic illness. The crowd is untruth, echoing Kierkegaard. Osho took it further, saying that the crowd lives in a hypnotic trance, and the only way out is meditation. The real crime, Osho said, is not to question. The real crime is to believe without seeing. And yet, belief is celebrated. The student who questions the teacher is punished. The child who challenges a ritual is silenced. The citizen who doubts propaganda is called a traitor. Society doesn't hate the questioner because they are rude. Society hates the questioner because they are awake. All four thinkers point to the same door: inwardness. But the moment you go inward, you start seeing how deeply you've been manipulated by outward forces, by media, by religion, by education, by culture. That's the start of inner rebellion, not with guns or slogans, but with silent awareness. When you see clearly that you are not your name, not your religion, not your memories, not your fears, something shatters. And in that shattering, freedom begins. But such freedom is not comfortable. It isolates you from the crowd. It makes you responsible for your choices. And that's why most people run back to the familiar, to authority, to comfort. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living, but the examined life is painful. It breaks illusions. It creates distance from the herd." Jung said, "Enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious." That darkness, our blind beliefs, inherited traumas, suppressed desires, is what society wants to avoid. And questioners shine a light on it, so society kills the questioner. If not physically, then mentally. It ignores, silences, ridicules them. It says, "You're too intense," or "You're negative," or "You think too much." All of this is defense, because deep down, the crowd knows it is asleep and hates being reminded of it. But history shows that the questioner is not defeated. Socrates' death did not silence inquiry. Krishnamurti's rejection of followers did not stop seekers. Jung's break from Freud did not end psychology. Osho's exile did not kill his laughter. Their words live on, because truth does not need an army. It only needs one courageous voice that dares to question everything, including itself. As the mystic Rumi once wrote, Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And life, when lived deeply, becomes a question, not a fixed answer. To question is to be alive, not to destroy others, but to dissolve your own ignorance, not to rebel against people, but against unconsciousness. That is the essence of these four great minds. Inward rebellion, the only rebellion that leads to freedom, truth, and love.